If you are an enthusiast or someone who has a general knowledge of amusement parks and roller coasters, you have probably heard about the Voyage, a legendary Gravity Group Woodie coaster located at Holiday World in Santa Claus, Indiana. Now, I'm not going to give a long introduction in this video, I'm going to jump right in with my opinion. For those who have followed me for quite a while, you would know that I have some out of the ordinary roller coaster opinions, so heading into the Voyage, I had very mixed expectations. One side of me wanted to believe my friend saying that it was one of the best roller coasters in the world, and the other side of me, well, I kinda knew that it wasn't going to find it as insane as others. However, when I entered Holiday World for the first time, it was for its iconic event, Hollywood Nights, which for those who don't know, is a coaster enthusiast event at Holiday World, where the park keeps all the roller coasters open until midnight and has tons of other perks catered to enthusiasts. So when I entered the park, my plan was to get the kiddie cred and meet up with my friends at the water park. However, when I walked in the park, I saw some of my friends I knew from social media and walked with them over to the Voyage for my first ride. Now, walking up to the ride, you are greeted with the iconic Thanksgiving sign, since that is the land the ride is located in, and you are then greeted with the iconic Voyage station. The queue line has little bits of theming with some ship pieces, but then again, this ride is not about the theming. My first ride was in the very back row of the train, and when I came off for the first time, I'm not going to lie, I was disappointed. And I'll get to why in a little bit. Now overall, I managed to get 3 rides on the Voyage. 2 of them were in the back car, and the other one was towards the front row in row 3. 2 of them were doing the day, 1 of them was at night, trimless. Now to get things started, the Voyage is not for the faint of heart. I can safely say that Voyage is not only the most intense wooden coaster I've ridden, but it is by far the most intense roller coaster overall that I've ridden. And when I say intense, I don't mean that by only positive G-forces. I mean as an overall experience between roughness, forces, airtime, laterals, you get the gist. Voyage is the most intense coaster I've ridden. So to go back to what I said earlier on how I was disappointed. Just to kick things off, for anyone who says this is a smooth ride, or smooth for a wooden coaster, or one of the smoother rides at Holiday World, they are lying or they have ridden the Voyage a little too much. On my first ride, I was so in awe of the fact that I was on the Voyage that I didn't really have time to process the ride. I sat in row 12, which is the very back row on the Voyage, and to be honest, the ride doesn't even have the best airtime. It isn't as strong as people say it is. I've heard many people say that this ride is the strongest ejector you can get on a wooden coaster, and while I would rank it high, I would say that this ride has the most amount of airtime on a wooden coaster, but it's a mix of decent ejector and some floater here and there. Honestly, the beginning of the ride is lackluster. The drop is good, but until you enter the speed hill, the ride is just eh. The 2 back-to-back floater hills don't really do anything at all, they're just there. Honestly, my favorite part of it was either looking at Thunderbird or Pilgrim's Plunge plot right next to the ride. And to be honest, that's completely fine, because right after these hills, the car crash really begins. You enter the speed hill, which is your first solid pop of ejector you'll get on the ride, and then you enter one final floater hill. And this hill gives you some decent floater airtime. But this is your last chance to breathe, and take a moment to realize the madness you're about to enter. When you dive back into the tunnel, you enter the famous Spaghetti Bowl, which in my opinion is the best part of the ride. Tucked back away in the woods, so you are flying right next to the trees. Plus, this is where you're going to get the most of these lateral forces. The Voyage doesn't mess around because from this point on, you get no physical break until you hit the final brake run. You then are going to enter a twisted airtime hill, which gives a solid pop of airtime, and then you go down this small dip, which honestly, in my opinion, gave the strongest pop of ejector on the ride. I don't know why this pop was so good, but it really was. You then go through a large turnaround and enter this weird airtime hill that twists you to the right with no banking. So you get laterals and airtime, and let me just say, what you think you're going to feel on this airtime hill, you really do feel. After this, you then enter 2 back-to-back 90-degree turns. I'm not going to lie, these did nothing at all for the ride. I wish they were just normal bang turns, because then you would have gotten at least some kind of laterals on it. They're not forceful at all. In my opinion, the ride that perfected these turns are rides like Mind Blower. Now, I haven't done Hades 360 or some of the other ones in China, but the way Mind Blower execute these 90-degree turns are really well. They're really forceful, and especially on that large overbank, you kind of get this weird moment of hang time on it. On the Voyage, you don't really feel any forces, it doesn't feel like you're sideways. I'm not gonna lie, I was very disappointed by these turns because I was expecting something like Mind Blower when they literally did nothing at all for the ride. After this, you then enter 2 back-to-back ejector pops, which give some great airtime, and then you head up into the trim brakes. Now, during my day rides, for some reason, they were hitting really hard, and everyone at the park who's been visiting for years said this was the hardest the trims have ever hit. After the trims, you head into the triple down. The first drop doesn't do anything, but the second, and especially the third, give some quality pops of ejector airtime. After the triple down, you go through 3 back-to-back airtime hills, which give some pretty good ejector, and you then go through a mess of track. Another 90-degree bang turn, which doesn't do much, twists out and go through this oddly shaped, twisted airtime hill. Personally, I thought this hill was actually one of the most surprising elements on the ride. You get laterals heading up into it, and then it twists out, giving some great airtime. After this, you dive down into the basement and go through another twisted airtime hill, which is pretty decent, and that'll really be the last airtime moment on the ride. After this, you dive down and go through one final helix before you head up into the brake run. Now, Voyage overall is a long ride that is loaded with everything, as I said earlier. But for me, it is not the most enjoyable wooden coaster I've ridden. And I'm going to be honest, I've never had a huge problem with rough roller coasters, even with rides such as the Great American Scream Machine over Georgia, which is known for being one of the roughest rides in the world. But for me, Voyage was just too rough. Now, overall, Voyage wasn't really that rough of a wooden coaster, but because this ride is so intense and it packs so much into this ride, between the airtime hills, the laterals, as I said earlier, when you pack all that in and you do get some severe roughness, it just makes the ride feel so much rougher than it actually is because of how intense this ride really is. And I'm not going to lie, on my ride in the front row, it might have been one of the roughest and most draining coaster experiences out there. When I hit the trim brakes, and I was riding by myself on this ride, so I didn't have any of my friends with me or anything, but when I hit the trim brakes, I felt so physically worn out because of how intense and rough the ride really was towards the front, and we are just beginning the second half. I swear, when I hit the brakes, I was so out of breath. This ride really is that crazy. I even came off the ride and said that was too much. I have never come off a roller coaster and said, that is way too much for me. This one did it for me. Voyage, congratulations. So if you want the craziest roller coaster experience possible, well, then I highly recommend the Voyage. Personally, for me, I love a ride that has a perfect mix of intensity and fun. Rides that try to throw you out of your seat or launch you at insane speeds or lift you up to crazy heights, while also having some moments of relaxation where you can just breathe and have a good time. Hence why Velocicoaster is my favorite roller coaster. It isn't the most intense coaster out there, but it definitely is the most intense ride overall in Florida, and it still packs a vicious punch. Now don't get me wrong, even with all the negative things I'm saying about the Voyage, is it in my top 10? Yes. Is it my personal favorite ride at Holiday World? Yes. But this isn't because of the day rides. If I wasn't talking about the day rides, I'm going to be honest, Voyage may not even be in my top 25. But luckily, I'm not only talking about the day rides, I'm talking about the night rides. At night, Voyage is a completely different ride and experience. For starters, it for some reason was smoother. Now, I have no explanation why, because it really doesn't make sense at all since the ride was going at least 8 miles per hour faster than it was during the day. But besides that, this ride's on a whole other level at night. The second half is significantly better because of the lack of trims. You fly through the trims as they decide to run the ride trimless during this event. And speeding through that spaghetti bowl in pitch black darkness is probably one of the craziest roller coaster experiences I think I've ever had. I was sitting next to one of my friends and we were just laughing and screaming because we were getting bashed into each other while getting some deadly airtime. And as you can see, my reaction after my first trimless night ride says it all. Now, the reason why I'm not going to judge the Voyage based on this one ride is because this is how the coaster runs for 2 nights a year, whereas my day rides were how the coaster runs every day. In the end, do I think Voyage is an overrated roller coaster? Yes. It is nowhere near the world's best roller coaster. Now, is it the world's best wooden coaster? That is possible, but I still have yet to experience the likes of Outlaw Run and El Toro. When you are going to ride the Voyage for the first time, try to keep your expectations low. Don't go in expecting the strongest airtime, and definitely don't go in expecting a smooth experience. Other than that, I would say the Voyage is an incredible ride. I know I spoke a lot of negatives about it, but really all people talk about are the positives for this ride, and I feel like I need to share my honest thoughts. It wasn't my favorite, but it still is an incredible roller coaster. So that's going to be it for my review on the Voyage at Holiday World. If you've ridden this legendary wooden coaster, let me know in the comment section down below and tell me what you guys think of the Voyage. Other than that, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and my second channel, TPH Productions, for copyright-free POVs and off-rides. Check out my merch in the description down below, and don't forget to check out my podcast, On the Hunt. As always, this is Hunter from Theme Park Hunting. I'll see you guys later, and follow the thrill.